What's up, everybody, and welcome to, drum roll please, EJ and Zach Talk Sports. I am EJ, and sitting next to me, who will be doing all the heavy lifting when it comes to talking sports and sports statistics, Mr. Zach Latessa. We are super excited. This is our inaugural show, and hopefully as we move forward, we might have some theme music, maybe a cool banner, a shirt for our buddy sitting between us. I am a long-suffering Mets fan, Miami Dolphins fan, and probably the worst fantasy football owner there ever was. So this guy is what it looks like to be waiting for any of my teams to win a championship. Not Zach over here, who's an New England Patriots fan. So he's been riding high in the hog for many years. But we have a 30-minute show we're excited to bring you guys, and we're going to be talking fantasy football, NFL. We're also going to be talking about some Major League Baseball, and we're going to be doing a little bit of NBA today. So what do you say we kick things off with the RMC Fantasy Football League? As we're filming today, we are getting ready to head into Week 3. And right now, shocking, I am 2-0 and leading my division. Our commissioner, George Sheehy, will probably be joining us in future segments to sit down and talk about the RMC League and the overview. But Zach, what have been your initial thoughts on the RMC League and fantasy football right now for these first 2 weeks?
It's been good. There's been a lot of injuries through the first few weeks. Not like major injuries, but a lot of players have been like one game out. And Aaron Jones exploded last week.
Yeah.
But then I traded Aaron Jones in one of my leagues, not the RMC League, but a different league, because he only had like 60-something yards. He had 4 touchdowns. That's where he got most of his points. Most of his targets were in the passing game.
Right, and this week I am in big trouble because I have both Dalvin Cook and Josh Jacobs, who look like they are both going to be ruled out. So, as far as that goes right now, what would you say are your top 3 fantasy players this year?
You gotta say Kyler Murray. He's been amazing. His team has been really good. Overall, everyone on the Cardinals, because of how Kyler is just in the pocket, you can't take him down. He's just throwing lasers to receivers. Then after that gets a bit tough, I gotta say Gronk, because Gronk is a tight end. Tight ends score not as much as the running backs and receivers and QBs, but they're one of the more important positions to have an advantage on over your opponent. And Gronk, just both weeks, he's had really good games. Tom Brady's really looking for him, and I like that because I was a Patriots fan. And then you got to say Derrick Henry just because of how good of a week he had last week. The first week was worrisome, but just his team was way behind. They had to pass the ball. Then last week they came out in playing the Patriots in the playoffs offense, just give it to Derrick Henry, and that's it.
Well, coming into the fantasy draft this year, there was a lot of speculation and a lot of guys that were very polarizing. One of them, who I'd love your thoughts on, is Jameis Winston. So how do you feel right now about Jameis Winston? And if you have Jameis Winston on your team, what would you be seeing his role as right now? Would he be a plug-and-play or matchup-dependent quarterback, or would you have him as a must-start?
Right now, I would be starting him, but I'd also make sure that you, in the draft, you secured a backup, like a solid, consistent backup QB, almost like a Derek Carr type, because Jameis could potentially have games or a season like he had in that first game against Green Bay. But then last week, the whole Saints team was just really disappointing. So, he's really inconsistent. So I feel like right now he should be a starter, but further on in the season, he might continue developing into a superstar, or he might end up having to be a backup.
Right. Let's look at a couple other guys right now. Your thoughts today, Justin Fields is making his first start. Your thought as far as he goes and fantasy value, and also being a Patriots fan, what's your take on Mac Jones?
Fantasy-wise, for both players, right now, they won't make much of an impact. Especially Mac Jones. Mac Jones is just playing the Bill Belichick offense, really. A lot of rushes, really short passes. He's not really bombing it deep, even though it's not a specialty, but also he can throw deep a bit, but they're easing him into it. eventually farther down in the season, he'll probably be more confident. Bill Belichick will be in his passing game, and he'll probably develop more. Justin Fields, I feel like maybe right away, but he'll be amazing fantasy-wise because he can do it all. He can throw it, he can run it. He's a perfect player almost. He was my favorite QB from this draft class, and especially after he beat Clemson. I really like what he can do, and I think the Bears are smart to start him because they're not going to win right now, so they got to build for the future, and he is the future of that team.
And you got to figure that Nagy is coaching for his job.
Yeah.
And is doing anything he can right now to placate to the fans.
Yeah.
And keep some energy on that field.
Yeah.
So before we transition to our NFL picks, let's go with a little fantasy hot take here. Who would you say right now, and I mean, we don't have to limit it to one, but give me some of your most overrated players right now.
I'm going to say Cooper Kupp, because Cooper Kupp's been, amazing the first 2 weeks, but Cooper Kupp's a great player, but he's not like a top 5 fantasy receiver, and that's just who he is. In real life, he's a very solid receiver. I don't think he's a receiver 1. He just had 2 really, really good games, and the whole Rams team has really been balling out in both those games. I think he'll cool down. He'll still be a starter fantasy-wise, but he won't be the superstar he's been.
I'm going to go with actually either one of 2 Chiefs. I'm going to say either Edwards-Helaire or Hardman. I feel that right now, all you got to do is throw a Chiefs jersey on, and everybody is, riding that wagon of, this is going to be a fantasy gravy train. But I feel that Edwards-Helaire has definitely not lived up to his hype being in that offense.
Well, I feel like Mecole Hardman, I feel like he's not overrated right now because of his speed and overall. But besides Kelsey and Hill, he's the top pass catcher in that offense. Mahomes does spread it around. So I feel like he's not going to be putting up insane stats, but he'll still be solid. Then Hilaire's interesting because last year he came out and started playing like the best running back in football, but then Andy Reid just went back to his pass first system, and Hilaire was kind of like in the background. So I don't think he's just going to be, once it comes down to crunch time to win games with Patrick Mahomes, they're not going to look to run the ball. So I think he is overrated. I agree with you.
All right. Well, anybody listening, you heard it here first. Hot takes from Zach. Edwards-Helaire, overrated. Cooper Kupp, overrated.
Oh, and Russell Wilson.
Oh, yes.
Because Russell Wilson, I say this all the time, he does it every year.
Hot take.
He's like a top 3 QB in the MVP conversation. Then halfway through the season, he's not.
He burns out.
So that almost makes Tyler Lockett also overrated because he's catching the passes from Russell Wilson.
Well, what do you say we move on and take a look at our 4 o'clock games today? Because right now, as we are filming, the 1 o'clock games are underway, so we will stay away from those, and we will take a quick look at today's 4 p.m. games, our night game tonight, and the Monday night game. So first, we start with the Jets and Broncos. What are your thoughts there?
It's a terrible game. It'll almost be fun to watch.
We'll have no choice because it's going to be on local TV.
How bad the game will be. Neither team really has an offense. And is Bradley Chubb still out? He is, right? Didn't he have a serious surgery?
Yeah.
So neither team really has any defense. I actually think the Jets are going to win this one.
Really?
Because watching the Jets last week, Zach Wilson threw four interceptions, but they weren't all his fault. The Patriots just bullied him pretty much. And I feel like they're just going to come out against the Broncos, and they're going to run the ball and pass it. And then it might be a shootout.
Right.
Because both teams, neither will really be able to stop the other one. But I just trust Zach Wilson more than the Broncos.
Well, I mean, Cortland Sutton coming back after that knee injury last year, he's already had 10 receptions for 173 yards. Melvin Gordon, who I'm not a huge fan of, has carried the ball 24 times, 132 yards and a TD. And then Bridgewater has thrown for almost 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. So I feel like neither one of these teams impresses me. I feel the Broncos at 2-0. They are probably more of a pretender right now than a true contender, 100%. Especially in that conference. Yeah. But they definitely have enough to get past the Jets. So I'm going with Broncos.
All right.
Now we go to my beloved Dolphins, who do nothing but kick me in the groin repeatedly, playing the Raiders in Las Vegas. So we have Tua out with cracked ribs, Jacoby Brissett getting the start. There are 4 quarterbacks in the league right now that are out rushing the Dolphins running back Myles Gaskin. So we have in that game, you got Derek Carr, who's been on fire right now. He's thrown for over 800 yards, 4 touchdowns, and of course Darren Waller, who's just an absolute beast, who has 170 yards on the season and 1 TD. So what are your thoughts on this game?
I think the Raiders are going to win by a very large amount. I think Jacoby Brissett probably is better than Tua, but neither are particularly good. The Dolphins team just isn't making plays right now. And Las Vegas is playing great, and there's no way Miami's going to be able to stop Darren Waller, and that it will free up plays for other receivers or Kenyon Drake.
It's an interesting game in a couple different ways, outside of just, who's going to win or lose today. One, you have to feel that Gruden, in some ways, this is kind of a make or break year for him. He's got that big contract. He's, a ton of money and the amount of years that are on it. Many people feel that the Raiders have kind of underperformed. I mean, they had the big win against Chiefs, last year, which kind of bought them some time. But, you feel that there's a lot riding on this season for Gruden. So a game like this, they got to win. And then the Dolphins, 1-1, they fall to 1-2. Are we on the phone looking for, seeing what we can get for Deshaun Watson?
Yeah.
To bring somebody in, or Cam. I mean, can how long can we go with Jacoby Brissett, especially with Tua going to the IR and being out probably a minimum of 3 weeks, and then coming back with cracked ribs as a quarterback? How is that going to affect him? When you heard that somebody like Aaron Rodgers, said that when his ribs were bothering him, he had a hard time kind of playing through it.
Yeah, I think for the long term, the Dolphins should either stick with Tua. They should stick with Tua until they find someone who can really, really help them. I don't think bringing guys like Brissett and Cam Newton, it'll help them be an okay team. They won't probably make it to the playoffs, and that will hurt their draft pick. I think not tank, but keep playing Tua, see if he shows you something. If he doesn't, try to find a piece to really help you start winning and move on, because you took him over Justin Herbert. It's terrible.
Yeah, we took him over. Yeah, I mean, as a Dolphins fan, like I said, you could look back at all the players we have either not signed, did not draft, or let walk, and we could probably field like 3 Pro Bowl teams. So now we move on to easily the premier matchup of the day, which is the Bucks and the Rams, both sitting at 2-0. The Bucks are going out to L.A. You have Brady, who is thrown for about 650 yards, 9 touchdowns already. Darrell Henderson, who's probably going to be a scratch today for Michelle because Henderson's got some ribs. And then your guy, Cooper Kupp, who has 271 yards and 3 TDs this year, sitting at 16 receptions. What are your thoughts on this game?
I think the Rams are going to pull off the upset. I think it's going to be a really battle of the defensives because both of these teams have great defensive. I think it's going to be a really close game. I think the Rams' defense is better, and I think the Bucks' defense is almost a bit overrated. I think Matt Stafford's going to find a way to find the holes in the defense and get a few scores and pull through for the win.
Yeah, I mean, you're not lying when you say it's a close game because it's only a point differential. If you're into, following the lines and the spreads that they put on these games, Tampa Bay is only given a point. So it's going to be definitely a tight game, and, whether or not the Rams defense can get a significant pass rush on Brady without having to blitz. Because if they can do that and Darnold can get home, their secondary will definitely have a much better chance of locking down those Bucs receivers.
Yeah.
Now for probably one of the most interesting games on the docket for today at 4:25 is the Seahawks traveling to the Vikings. Seahawks sitting at 1-1, Vikings at 0-2. If you're into it again, Seahawks are giving 2 points to the Vikings, but you have Russell Wilson with basically 600 passing yards, 6 touchdowns. Cook, who looks like he might be a scratch with an ankle injury, at 192 yards so far this season and a touchdown. And Tyler Lockett, who has almost 300 receiving yards at 278 and 3 touchdowns. Give me your thoughts on this game.
I think even if Dalvin Cook doesn't play, I think the Vikings will win because I think Russ plays really good. and neither team plays defense really at all. But I feel like the Vikings will be able to stop Russ and his receivers more than the other players, even though Thielen's been very good. But Justin Jefferson's been kind of disappointing.
One of your guys on your team.
He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been amazing. I think this is going to be his game. I think nobody's going to be there to guard him. I think even if Dalvin plays, they're going to decide to air the ball out because that's how you have to beat the Seahawks. I think they're going to end up winning.
It's such an interesting thing that you said because, we're saying that neither team really is playing that great on defense when for such a long time, both of these teams, their strengths were their defense. And neither one of them is playing great defense right now. And then we have our final two games. The night game tonight, which sends the Packers out to San Francisco, where they're playing the Niners. Packers are 1-1, and Niners are sitting at 2-0. You have Garoppolo, who's obviously playing for his job, about 500 yards passing, 2 TDs. Aaron Jones with 76 yards and a touchdown. And Deebo Samuels with 282 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, the stat line with Aaron Jones, that can't be correct because Aaron Jones had like 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think he had
last
4.
game. Yeah. So, as far as Aaron Jones goes, let's see if we can pull up his stats. But what are your thoughts on this game?
It's a really interesting game, like team-wise and coaching-wise. Both teams are very well coached. I just see the Packers as a much better team. I don't trust the Niners offense, especially against a good defense like the Packers. I don't think that Jimmy Garoppolo and Deebo Samuel are going to be able to do the same things that they have been doing to a better defense. And then the Niners defense is very, very good. But Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, you can only stop them for so long. I think Devontae catches at least 1 touchdown, and I think the Packers blow them out.
So an interesting thing, doubling back to our Aaron Jones stats is, the rushing stats, which at first did not seem accurate to me, are absolutely accurate. A lot of the damage that Aaron Jones has done this year has been receiving, where he's caught 3 TDs and, is about 60 yards. So 60 yards through the air and 3 touchdowns.
And in that game against the Lions, most of their offense came from Aaron Jones.
Right.
In the receiving game, that made a big boom. I feel like the Niners are going to focus on that more to make sure that Aaron Jones doesn't beat you in the passing game. That's going to leave Devontae and other receivers like Tawny and Marcus Valdes-Scantling and such to get open, and Rodgers is just going to do what he does.
Right. And we close out with the Monday night game, which, maybe since I'm not a Cowboys and Eagles or an NFC East fan, never really got too hung up in the Eagles-Cowboys drama and the allure of that game. So not super excited to see the Eagles and Cowboys on Monday night, but both are sitting 1-1. You have Dak coming off that horrific injury last year, about 650 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Hurts running better than throwing right now, about 150 yards running. Touchdown, actually, is one of the quarterbacks I referenced that's out rushing the Dolphins. And CeeDee Lamb, one of my guys. 185 yards so far this year and a TD. What do you think about this game, and what are your thoughts on Eagles-Cowboys? That's still a premier matchup? You think that these two teams still have that kind of draw, like a must-watch game?
I really don't think so. I feel like Dallas out-talents and will outplay the Eagles by a lot. Just their offensive core, they have 3 amazing receivers. Well, I'm calling Michael Gallup amazing. But Dak Prescott looks good. I'm not a Zeke Elliott guy, but when you are spacing out with all those receivers, you will have a few good rushes. I feel like they'll do good. And then the Eagles, their offense is a bit inconsistent. Their receivers are interesting. Devontae Smith had a really good first game. But I don't know Jalen Hurts if he will really. Depends on how efficiently he throws the ball. That might change the game, but I feel like Dallas will win this one.
All right. Well, let's put our stamp on the NFL before we transition over to Major League Baseball. And final thoughts on the NFL right now. Why don't you give me one team that you feel is overrated?
I'm gonna say the Bills, because most people are considering the Bills still a top tier team, and Josh Allen just looked almost like his 2019 self, like an inconsistent passer, and that's kind of hurting the whole team because their offense and their defense really rallied off Josh Allen being an MVP type player. Right now, he's just not. So, I feel like they will make it to the playoffs, but I don't think they'll make it out of the first round.
I mean, they have to
They're
win a big
expecting.
game at some point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, this sounds crazy, so this might be a hot take on me because considering the team that I'm going to say I think is completely overrated and I'm tired of hearing about them, they are 0-2, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. I
Sure.
feel the Indianapolis Colts have not done anything to really get the attention that they seem to, bring on most, talk and media shows and the expectations that this team carries. That's just my opinion. And I know they have the talent. They got the running back and Taylor, but I'm not a Carson Wentz guy. He actually managed to sprain both his ankles. Max ankle sprains by
Who's
Carson
starting
Wentz.
for them now?
Is
He gonna play?
he's gonna play.
But their backups like Jacob Eason, right?
Yeah.
I kind of agree with you on that because their defense is solid, but they have not played amazing so far this year. They have a great running back, but receivers and even Carson Wentz when he's healthy, which he's not usually, their offense just is very unexplosive. They don't score that many points, and because of that, I don't think that they're gonna.
All right, and a hot seat question for you, since we are in a New York Giants market. Daniel Jones last year as Giants starting quarterback, yes or no?
Yeah. It's kind of fun watching Daniel Jones. He's not a terrible player in any way, but he's a below average QB in the NFL. And to win, you want to have an above average QB. I'd be fine keeping him. That's why they still have him right now. But especially if Saquon's not looking like a superstar, you need someone to really make plays and change your franchise. And I'm not paying as much money as Daniel Jones would want for him to be my franchise player.
Gotcha. Well, moving on. This is where you're going to have to do most of the talking, my friend, because I am still too bitter to really be doing too much Major League Baseball discussion as a Mets fan and watching this ridiculous collapse that took place this year.
You guys just got eliminated from potentially making the playoffs.
Well, we were eliminated back in April,
But,
probably.
like, mathematically.
As a Mets fan. So, walking through right now the Major League Baseball playoff picture, we basically only just have a couple spots up for grabs. But we're looking at the American League right now. We got the Rays, Astros, White Sox, and then in the wild cards, we have your Sox and the Yanks. So why don't we start with the American League and kind of give me your thoughts on the American League playoff picture right now.
I feel like, as good as the Rays have been all year, I don't think they're better than the White Sox. I think the White Sox are going to end up winning the American League. And for the wild card game, I think the Red Sox will beat the Yankees if they're there, even though they've lost 2 straight against them if they lose tonight. It's a sweep. I just feel like Chris Sale's pitched phenomenal coming back. Our offense, knowing that it's our potential last game of the season, will really catch fire. I feel like, and we have the better coach, I feel like we're going to win the wild card game, but I don't think we could win the division series. And, yeah.
So, if everything holds serve right now and we go into the playoffs with the Sox and the Yankees holding those 2 wild cards, what do you feel either one of these teams needs to do to get hot and make a deep playoff run? And who do you think is the candidate that is most likely for an upset in the American League?
I feel like very possible that the wild card team could beat the Rays. Just because the Rays, all their players are like low average, except for Wander Franco, like hit a lot of home runs. Like every player on their team has like 15 home runs, like a 250 average. I feel like both of the Red Sox and the Yankees have very solid starting pitching and great lineups. I feel like if both those lineups for the Red Sox, if Devers and Bogarts, they've been solid, but they've kind of cooled down, both of them recatch fire again. And for the Yankees, you just need Judge and Stanton to keep hitting like they've been hitting. I feel like both of them could beat the Rays.
So we got Now, being a Sox fan, I have a feeling I know where you're going with this, but we got the Blue Jays, the Mariners both sitting 2 games back, the Athletics sitting 4 games back. Which one of these teams do you give the best chance to possibly sneaking into one of the wild cards?
I'm going to start by eliminating the Mariners. The Mariners aren't going to make that jump over the last few games. I don't know the Blue Jays' schedule, but I would probably say the Blue Jays. The AL East is the best division in baseball. The Blue Jays are by far the best 4 seed in a division in baseball. They have Vlad, who's been hitting much better recently than he had at the beginning of the second half. Bo Bichette, their pitching's good. They have my pick for the AL Cy Young, who's the pretty obvious pick. But I feel like if they really can make a push down the stretch in either the Red Sox and Yankees, looks like maybe the Red Sox because they've lost the last 2. If the Red Sox keep losing, I think the Blue Jays could potentially pass them, but I'm really hoping they don't.
Okay, well, let's move on then to the National League. So, National League, we have probably the quietest team in all of baseball, the Giants, who have just wire to wire been phenomenal this year and probably not getting the attention that they deserve, seeing as how they were most likely overshadowed in that division with the Dodgers being the Dodgers and also the Padres and all the attention that the Padres had. But we got the Giants, the Brewers, the Braves, and then our wild cards, we have the Dodgers and the Cardinals. So why don't you walk me through your thoughts on the National League right now?
The National League, I think, is still better than the American League, but it's a very boring league right now. The Giants have been amazing. The All-Star break, when they were the best team in baseball, nobody thought that they'd keep it up and end up being the Dodgers. Well, it's not clinched yet, but they will. Then the Braves have tried, just without Acuna, they're not going to make any noise. Who's the other? The Brewers.
Yep.
The Brewers, same thing, except not an injury. Unless Christian Yelich turns back into Christian Yelich, I don't think they'll make it out of the first round, especially because Brandon Woodruff has not pitched great in the second half.
The only teams in the National League who have not been mathematically eliminated right now are the Phillies sitting 5 back and the Reds sitting 6. Do you see either one of these teams sneaking in?
I don't. With the games left, being 5 back is like this close to being mathematically impossible. So I don't think either team can make it. I think the Dodgers will pretty easily beat the Cardinals in the wild card game. I think the Dodgers will end up winning the American League. What am I talking about? The National League. Because
Hot takes. You think they're going to get past the Giants?
I just feel like when it comes to the postseason, the Dodgers have a bunch of people who've done it before. They won last year. They're a more talented roster. I feel like when it comes to postseason, Mookie Betts is going to turn into Mookie Betts, which he has not been all season. But I feel like he's going to suddenly turn into like the 2018 version of himself, last year, who led teams to the World Series.
Now, we can't move on until we actually bring up the Padres. And I need your thoughts on what went wrong with the Padres this year. What happened?
The whole team. At the All-Star break, it looked like they had the clear MVP. Tatis has been awful since the All-Star break. He got injured, came back, hit 3 home runs in 2 nights. He's probably hit like single digits since then. Just, it's not really. And then Machado hasn't been as good. And then without those 2 players, everyone else on their lineups was just kind of fluky. And their pitching is really not as good anymore.
Okay. So that puts us in a situation where you see the Dodgers coming out of the NL.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the Sox.
The White Sox.
Yep, yeah. Coming out of the AL.
I have the White Sox winning. I feel like the White Sox, the thing about the Dodgers is that they have a team that's done in the postseason before. There's a reason they're behind the Giants, and that's because Mookie's not hitting. Bellinger, no comment. And I feel like the only team that can go pitcher for pitcher with the Dodgers is the White Sox. They have 4, maybe 5 really good pitchers who I would trust to pitch in the World Series. In their lineup, they would probably have a much better record if Eloy Jimenez had played the whole season. Eloy's amazing. Robert, everyone, they have a team that can hit for power, hit for average, steal bases. I feel like they're going to win in 7 because the Dodgers
Okay.
push it.
Last question, team-oriented question. Holding serve with the teams that are currently in the playoffs. So any non-playoff team going into next year, whose roster would you like to have?
I have 3 teams I'm thinking of. You
Okay.
gotta say, I have 3 or 2. I only have 2. You gotta say the Blue Jays, just because they have an insanely young team. I feel like they're just gonna keep getting better and better. And then the Angels, because the Angels have had a really good season. Shohei Ohtani's looked like an MVP type player. And they haven't had Mike Trout for most of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if Mike Trout's back, if they add pitchers, which they do need to do, I feel like they could definitely make the playoffs next year.
All right. Well, then let's talk about players instead of playoffs. And we'll look at the MVP right now. And NL MVP. I want your opinion on something. Right now, I know Harper is probably one of the front runners for the NL MVP. But you have Juan Soto, who has come on and is having literally a historic September.
Yeah.
Now, his team is in basically last place, but he has hit close to 500, 7 homers. He's walked 25, really, if you round it up, 26% of the time, and he's only struck out, if we are rounding, 6% of the time. That he's having an insane statistical September. But my question to you is, when we talk about MVP and we look at that V, which stands for valuable, what constitutes a valuable player? Is it statistics, or is it how deep and competitive his team is with him being a part of it?
Valuable means that you're a really, really good player who puts up amazing stats. But if your team doesn't win, it doesn't mean anything, because what value are you bringing to the team? Because the Nationals, even though they sold everyone, Juan Soto has had an amazing second half. So is Bryce Harper, and Bryce Harper's team's better. And while Juan Soto's second half might be a bit better, Bryce's team is just better, and that lifts him. And then that Tatis, we wouldn't be having this conversation if Tatis kept hitting, but he didn't. He might not even be a finalist. They might end up throwing like a pitcher, like Scherzer in as the 3rd spot in the MVP. I think he'll end up being a finalist, but I don't think Tatis deserves to win it. I think Bryce Harper does.
The other question regarding the MVP running, and we've seen this in years past, where even players like Carlos Beltran would go on these historic playoff runs and get really hot. Where do we place the streaky player who may put up insane statistics for a short run of time against a player who is consistent through the entire season?
A player who's consistent, I feel like, is going to be more valuable to me. That's why, for the AL MVP, I don't have Shohei Ohtani. Because Shohei Ohtani was insanely hot in the first half. Then in the second half, he started cooling down. He's been very good recently. But I think Salvador Perez has been hitting all year. He's been better in the second half, but he was hitting in the first half too. He's never really dropped off. And it's especially because he's a catcher. Because Shohei Ohtani's main appeal is that he's a pitcher and a hitter. So if we're considering positions, which I really don't think you should, but if you do, then he's a catcher putting up historic stats for the catchers. He's hit the most home runs in a season ever by a catcher.
Right. So what would you say right now are your front runners or your picks for both the AL and NL MVPs?
So, Bryce Harper, just because he's been so good in the second half. If you look at his overall statistics for the season, he doesn't look like an MVP type player. My bad. He doesn't
Getting
look
choked
like
up about Bryce Harper.
One sec. I have another drink in here. I'm gonna grab it because I'm super thirsty. He doesn't look like an MVP type player with statistics. But he's also been leading this team to wins. The bottom of the 9th inning, bases loaded, there's not another player I'd rather have up. That's how he's just always clutch in those scenarios. He's really Not this year because they didn't make the playoffs, but I feel like he's looking like he's going to earn that contract that they gave him. So I feel like he's the MVP in the NL. And then the AL, I've already said Salvador Perez. An historic season for a catcher. Shohei Ohtani's amazing, but I think he's slightly overrated because his hitting's really good. His hitting's amazing. He has cooled down, though, a bit. Recently he's been insanely hot, but his pitching is average. He's not an above-average pitcher. It's just so cool because he's a hitter and he can pitch somewhat. Like, some people are picking him for the AL Cy Young. He's not that good of a pitcher.
Right.
And then Perez has just been so... He's putting his name in the record books this season. I feel like he deserves to win it.
So we look at a guy like Scherzer, who clearly it's an iconic pickup as far as you look at mid-season pickup and the impact of that player on the team. What does a pitcher have to do to overcome a high statistical hitter to win an MVP award?
They have to, one, like Scherzer's done, really change the team's dynamic. Make it known that whenever they're pitching, his team has a really good chance of winning. And they have to be really electric. They can't be a pitcher like some pitchers who pitch a lot of innings, get a lot of outs, but don't have that many strikeouts. You got to strike a lot of guys out. You got to be like must-watch TV whenever you're playing because you only pitch every 5 days. So every 5 days, you have to be electric.
Gotcha. Well, before we transition over to some NBA talk, we're going to leave all of our Cy Young talk and Rookie of the Year talk for our future podcasts. Last question, hot take style. Is there a playoff team whose manager will not be in the dugout for them next year?
Let me think about that one. I think it's very likely that Aaron Boone, if the Yankees lose the wild card game, I don't think Aaron Boone will be the Yankees manager next year. Just because that's how the Yankees fans are, and they'll put the pressure on their organization. They're like, we haven't made it to the World Series. Thank you. Next. And then all the other guys seem like to be in somewhat sturdy scenarios.
All right. So, NBA, going right into your wheelhouse right now. We'll start with the wild offseason and the NBA draft. Now, I have a couple guys I want to run past you and get your thoughts on their draft status. But just as an overview right now, what are your thoughts on the current NBA offseason and your initial thoughts on the draft? Which teams really did a great job positioning themselves to make a run this year and also to take some jumps, moving a few rungs up that ladder, getting closer and closer to a championship?
The offseason was pretty cool. I feel like some people are almost spoiled by how good the 2019 offseason was, when 50% of the All-Star teams switched teams. Because the big names, there weren't that many in this offseason, superstar talents. I don't think there were really any. But it was a really good offseason, except that the Lakers got everyone. Any good player, like Kendrick Nunn, who's an amazing player, signed for $1 million with the Lakers just so he can get a free ring. I don't know as a player why you would want to do that, because that doesn't bolster your career legacy. For Russell Westbrook, if he wins a ring, maybe it bolsters his legacy a bit. But if Kendrick Nunn wins a ring here, if we look back at the end of his career and we're well, he won a ring when he was super young on the bench for the Lakers. It's not really. And then the Nets even upgraded. They got Patty Mills, which was huge. They have a guy who, coming off the bench, will just give them buckets so they can rest Kyrie, Harden, and KD at different periods of time. LaMarcus Aldridge came back, which that doesn't make sense for me because he had a heart condition. I guess he's just I want to win a ring. I don't know. Can heart conditions go away?
No.
So I don't know why.
I'm no cardiovascular surgeon or doctor, but they don't tend to just resolve themselves.
I don't know why he came back. I still don't see the Nets winning the championship just because you got to have defense on your team. And that's why I think they should. Well, that's a rumor that we can get to another time. But for the draft was very fun. This was a really, really, really good draft class, especially very top heavy. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Greene, Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, Jalen Suggs. That's a pretty good top 5.
Anybody in there that you felt went out of place?
Yeah, I feel like 4 and 5 should have flip-flopped. Scotty Barnes is a great player. I just don't know if he has the superstar talent that Toronto desperately needs right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Toronto team, they have Siakam, who's a great player. Don't think he's a number 1 option. Van Vliet, great defender, not number 1 option. They need like a scorer. And while Cade Cunningham and Jalen Greene, who were the 2 best scorers probably in the draft, were already gone, Jalen Suggs, who had shown how good he can be as a scorer at Gonzaga, especially in the March Madness, was available. They took a primarily defender-first player. Their defense can be great, but you gotta score baskets to win. And then that's good for the Magic, because the Magic also need that type of player, and they got Jalen Suggs. So
now, one of the players that was a head-scratcher for me inside the top 10 was the Magic's second pick with Franz Wagner.
Yeah.
Not really sure. I mean, there's not much information on him. Only played a couple years of college basketball. Not the best three-point shooter that's out there. And a lot of people are, when they discuss him, rave about his defense.
And his shooting, though. They talk about him as a 3-and-D player, which doesn't really make much sense. He seems a lot to me like his brother, Mo Wagner. I think it has like an accent on it, like Mo Wagner.
Okay.
Or something. But I watched him in the tournament, and everyone's saying he's like a top 10 pick. And really, he didn't show me anything that I was like, wow, this guy's super talented. He just seemed like a bottom-of-the-rotation player to me. Like a guy who can put in, maybe clamp somebody up, maybe hit 1-3. Nothing else.
So with the Magic having the opportunity to pick twice in the top 10, how do you feel that they look going into the season now? What kind of season do you envision for the Magic?
A bad season. I think they're going to look at probably a top 3 pick next year.
Okay.
But that's good to build pieces around Suggs. But they might not be that bad because it's interesting. They just have a ton of guards.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have 4 really young, I would say, solid guards. They have Markelle Fultz, who's injured, who, when he's playing, he's a very okay player. Jalen Suggs. Cole Anthony, who I really like, because he's a UNC guy. He's more of a bench spark plug than a really star player. Then they drafted R.J. Hampton. Well, they didn't draft him. They traded for him. R.J. Hampton's also, like, a guy I don't see as a really star player. So they have 3, like, solid guards. Then 1 guy who could potentially build their franchise around. And they still have some players who can help them win, but not enough to really help them win. So I think they'll win a few more games than they should, than they want to, but they'll still have a high pick to build their young talent.
Last pick I want your thoughts on is 12 to the Spurs, Joshua Primo. Not really sure I understand this one. Seemed like a huge reach. 18 obviously always presents a ton of potential when you hear about a young player of that age coming into the league. Not really positive what San Antonio was anticipating as far as selecting him at that point, other than the fact that they have a great San Antonio is a quality franchise, but I'm not positive in what they were thinking with taking a player like Primo that high in the draft.
Yeah, I really don't know. He doesn't seem like a Spurs type player to me. The Spurs are great at developing players, but they would like to draft players who have like great fundamentals and like are already solid players, and then develop them into superstars. When they picked him there, I had no clue who he was. I'd never heard his name before. He's in the mock drafts. He was not going at 12. I just don't see why they picked him there. So, yeah, I think he might be a solid player, but not worthy of that pick.
Right. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, Zach is also a massive Celtics fan.
Yeah.
So we're going to start today with why don't you tell me how you would fix the Celtics?
So, really, I think you have two options. You can play the waiting game. Wait 2 to 3 years. The Nets super team is done because they're getting older. And then you still have Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown and maybe Rob Williams. Great team. But if you want to win immediately, I thought you had to trade Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart for some young players and picks for an all-star type player to build a really good big three. Like maybe Smart, Nesmith, Pritchard, and 3 first-round picks for Bradley Beal. But we signed to an extension. I don't know if the money works out anymore. So really your options are, this came out the other day that Karl Anthony Towns was really unhappy in Minnesota. Then he said it wasn't true, but because they fired their GM out of nowhere. Jalen Brown is a great player. I love Jalen Brown. I would trade him for Karl Anthony Towns, straight up. Because I feel like Towns is a great player to play alongside Jason Tatum. And then with Brown gone, Smart steps into a starter role, which would help. Oh my gosh. Which would help because really the defense was good already. Like with Brown, Tatum, and we had an all defensive lineup, and Smart then almost brought not as much value as he would in a lineup which has Karl Anthony Towns. And without Jalen Brown, so he would have to be the primary wing defender then, which I feel like would be good. Then you just gotta figure out a trade with a trade exception. I don't know if we have one right now. And some of the young players to get not a star but a quality point guard. Dennis Schroeder can be our backup. He's almost a star. He's on the edge. Malcolm Brogdon would be a great fit alongside Jason Tatum just because he passes the ball, he plays defense. He can score but doesn't need the ball in his hands. I feel like for the Celtics, you just gotta add, if it involves trading Brown or Smart, you gotta somehow get another different star player. And then just upgrade the point guard position a bit. And then I think we're good.
Funny Karl Anthony Towns fact. Liam Hughes, longtime RMC student turned teacher, went to high school with Karl Anthony Towns.
That's
they both
pretty cool.
went to St. Joe's in Metuchen.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Liam does not possess the basketball skills and the athletic prowess that Karl Anthony Towns does, but we would hope that Liam could hold his own against him in a guitar battle. So, all right, on that. So, which roster right now would you like to have heading into this year's season in regards to potential? Not best on paper, but the team that you feel has the biggest chance to make a giant leap this year. Whose roster, under the radar roster, do you like the best?
I don't know if this is a giant leap, but I think the Hawks will get better. They made the conference finals. I don't see them making it past there, but record-wise, because they have a young team. Trae Young is going to get better. I think Trae Young is probably going to be an MVP contender. John Collins is getting better. Clint Capella's not getting better, but he's just great. Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter, all the young wings will get better. I feel like they're just going to progress into almost a dynasty type thing because eventually they're going to lose them, but for a few years they're going to have all these players under rookie contracts playing great. Not for next year, but for the future. The Thunder look great.
Okay.
Because they have all those picks. They have Shai Gil. Oh my gosh. My voice is dead.
You're getting choked up about the Thunder. What are you going to do?
They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's an amazing player. They got Lou Dort, Darius Baisley, a bunch of role players who can really help them. They have a star player. They can use those picks in the future to either add a star player through a trade or just draft all of them and have a great roster through the draft. It will take time, though.
3 players right now that 90% of us have not heard of, who you feel have the opportunity to become household names by the end of this upcoming season.
That you haven't heard of or that are just underrated?
Well,
there's not many people. Well, one guy you probably haven't heard of much is Keldon Johnson. He plays for the Spurs. He was on Team USA. He's a power forward, small forward type player. He plays defense. He can hit the three. He he doesn't have the potential to be like a top 5 player, but I think if he really progresses through the Greg Popovich system, he could really become like an all-star type player. Then, one guy who just totally fell under the radar last year, who still has a bunch of potential, and really could have really helped a team win, is Karis LeVert. Because he had that big like surgery injury, while he was being traded to the Pacers. Then once he came back, no one really cared, because the Pacers were terrible. I feel like he's a really good player, and he could also one day be an all-star. And the one guy who I think next season is going to take the leap into superstardom is Ja Morant. Because statistics-wise, he can get the statistics down. But going last year before his knee injury, everyone was like, Ja Morant is one of the best in the game. Then he got his knee injury, he came back, and people really forgot about him. He led his team to the playoffs 2 straight years with a subpar supporting cast, especially because Jaren Jackson Jr. wasn't playing. He has the athleticism, the speed, he can shoot it. He's a plus defender. Another guy on the same team, Jaren Jackson Jr. He was out pretty much all of last year. He's a 7-footer who can defend probably three positions, I would say. He can hit the 3, he can post you up. I feel like he could develop into a Kristaps Porzingis, like when he was on the Knicks,
Gotcha.
Except a bit stronger.
Rookie of the year will be
Jalen Greene. I didn't say this earlier when we were talking because Cade Cunningham was the right pick because they didn't have a choice. Jalen Greene's going to be the best player from this draft class. Showed in Summer League, showed in the G League. He can score unlike anyone else in the draft class and in the league right now. No one can score it as good as Jalen Greene. Again, he's like a Bradley Beal type, except a bit better. He doesn't play defense, which he can work on. He's not a great passer, but he's just such a great scorer. He's going to average 20 plus, and I feel like the ball is just going to be in his hands for the Rockets, and it's going to make it interesting, must-watch TV, the Rockets. And because of that, people are going to be more noted on Jalen Greene.
Well, we almost forgot you guys were out there. Been listening to Zach just drop some knowledge bombs on everybody. So what we know from today's, time to put a bow on everything, and what we know from today's podcast is Cooper Kupp is overrated, is Aaron Boone will be out as Yankees manager, and Jalen Greene will be the NBA Rookie of the Year. So we're going to close out today with a segment that I like to say, Zach, what's on your mind?
Well, a few days ago, J.J. Redick retired after a long and very solid NBA career. And originally I was saying that I think he should be a Hall of Famer. That might be a bit bold, but he'll be very close and should be really respected because I think he is the best role player of all time just because of his three-point ability. It's a way to fit with other teammates.
There it is, J.J. Redick, Hall of Famer. Well, I want to thank you for sitting with me and educating me in all things sports. And for all you out there, keep on the lookout for our next podcast where we'll be running down the RMC Fantasy League a little bit greater depth. We'll be looking at a little bit more NFL. As we get closer to the Major League playoffs, we'll now look at some the award races. We'll have all of our Major League baseball teams locked in, and we will be creeping closer to the start of the NBA season. Till then, take care and see you next time.